In 1979, the Fenrir Directive was formed, claiming absolute authority over the recently thawed Nastondey Island and its disturbing landmarks. Buried deep within layers of bureaucracy, the Directive's goal is to study the occult in all its forms. Accomplishing this through its operational arm, Project Crimson Aurora, they oversee exploration of Nastondey, carrying out surveys, expeditions, and artifact extraction. The workhorses of PCA are known as the Pathfinders. Their official title is the 13th Strategic Logistics Company, and they are viewed less as logistics and more as a sacrificial artery feeding men and material into a land where the terrain itself resists passage. Though considered expendable, the Pathfinders hold a paradoxical prestige within the Directive's ranks, both feared for the corruption they carry back, known as dream distortion, and revered as the few who can traverse the land where god husks still green. Prospice Anomalous Logistics is a peculiar game sat somewhere between an SCP Foundation entry and a rugged driving simulator. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this stunningly unique horror game as I journey across Nastondey. I highly suggest experiencing this free playtest for yourself over on Steam, and if you want to avoid spoilers, skip to this chapter. We start at a camp set around the rigid corpse of a giant human-like being before I'm given the task of transporting another specimen to base. Immediately hopping in my truck, I begin the tutorial journey only to realize my cargo is a giant severed hand. The bar has been set and things can only get more peculiar from here. Learning the basics through swamps and muddy roads, I come to find out the map is only partially useful as my truck pings nearby navigation towers to triangulate my position. However, the island of Nastondey interferes with these signals, often leaving me to guesstimate my position, but that's fine, maps are overrated anyway. Eventually, I arrive at my home base, the stark concrete structure where I can get work, upgrade my truck, and most importantly, find my bed. Dropping off the specimen, I sign up for my next route before congratulating myself on a job well done with a nap before heading back out. A low-lying fog had settled in the morning, making the already eerie landscape full of the unknown even more off-putting, knowing that just out of sight could be any strange anomaly or unknown creature, but I had a job to do. I loaded up my truck by throwing everything full force into the back of it. Thankfully, these cases are industrial grade, so nothing was broken, and if it was, not my problem. I quickly plotted my route and set off into the morning mist. There's a thin line between terrifying and tranquil that this game manages to walk. The rumbling, squeaking movements of my truck against the deathly silent backdrop of this long-forgotten island helps me forget that it's littered with the corpses of gods. Pushing this to the back of my mind, I continue onwards. Navigating the barely distinguishable roads, I arrive quicker than expected as rain begins to fall. I unload the cargo into the outpost, and before I know it, I'm heading back to base. Unfortunately, my questionable navigation skills kick in and I lose the road almost immediately. Not a fucking word from those of you who watch my Twitch streams. The YouTube viewers still think I'm at least mildly competent. The unplanned detour was as much a curse as it was a blessing as I stumbled upon my first anomaly. I'd been warned such things may appear in the field and that I should do everything in my power to collect or collate them before returning to base. This one looked mundane enough, or so I hoped as I approached it. Thankfully, nothing untoward happened. I was able to extract and transport it back to base. According to reports, this is known as an ichor teardrop. A crystallized sphere of concentrated ichor, a highly sought-after substance. The soil of the island is sodden with it, and when certain conditions are met, the ichor particles begin to gather, floating above the ground as if rejected by the soil itself. With the day still early, I took on 2 more jobs and got to work, but not before accidentally buying a roof rack for my truck. Stupid computer. Earlier, I'd also bought a nav dart, something to help me if I got lost, which is more likely than I care to admit. Next up, I was to locate a black box from a nearby helicopter crash and erect a nav spire, something to help myself and Pathfinders after me navigate a little easier. It's hard not to lose yourself in the haunting yet picturesque surroundings, but perhaps that's part of how the island claims you, lulling you into its charms before snapping its jaws shut. I couldn't help but find myself admiring the scenery before being tugged back to reality by another anomaly. Nothing to worry about though, just another Ica teardrop. These seem entirely benign, but they do make for another nice little bonus. It did take me a little while to get accustomed to the distances on the map. Every time I thought I had a large track ahead of me, it turned out to be a simple jaunt, as long as I stuck to the paths. It took me barely any time at all to arrive at the crossroads where I was instructed to plant the nav spire. There's a distinct sense of paranoia that creeps into the back of your skull whenever you need to leave the truck. As I step out of that little protective bubble, I can't help but wonder if I'd have enough time to sprint back should something crest over the nearby hill and catch me unaware. But I had a task to complete, and sadly I couldn't do it from behind the wheel. Planting the nav spire is simple enough, but it doesn't quite look how I expected. It's strangely esoteric, the bones and amulets chiming softly in the winds. I've no idea what they're for, but it does the job, so who am I to question how? As I begin my search for the black box, I realized I would need to leave the safety of the dirt roads that I'd been following. There had been something comforting about knowing where I was going this entire time, or at the very least, someone had come before me. But I knew I'd have to leave the beaten track eventually. I just didn't expect to get lost immediately. Knowing I had to climb the nearby hills, I, for some reason, decided I would do this by trying to climb a bravely cumbersome path, while a far easier one lay just around the corner. Thankfully, I spotted this before I fucked things up even further. There's a reason I don't have an actual driver's license. It took no time to find the helicopter wreck, its charred carcass standing out amongst the field. Clearly it had been here a while, and while I could find no signs of the pilot or any other staff, the black box was easy to find with my equipment. But paranoia got the best of me, so I quickly bundled it into my truck and made back to the dirt road leading me to base. I was starting to wonder if I'd overestimated just how dangerous Nastondey was. Besides the creeping sense of paranoia, I'd yet to stumble into anything worth concerning myself over besides steep cliffs and deep mud my truck might get stuck in. But either way, my bed was calling, as was the next job. For this job, I've been tasked to fetch a fossil found by a nearby research team. It's the furthest I've gone, but I can take comfort in there being a road all the way there, past the nav spire that I built earlier. Packing up my growing collection of things to save myself from getting lost, I set off for the camp. This little journey is starting to become familiar now, past the lake, along the river, and up into the hills. Even with the fog, I've started to get a sense of direction. I've begun to get comfortable. This was a mistake. Rounding the corner, now some ways up into the hills, I began to hear a noise, a soft wailing as if someone was calling out, but the words were all muffled. For some reason, my first instinct was to leave my truck in search of this noise, because apparently my will to live doesn't outweigh my curiosity. It doesn't take long to find the source. It was, of course, an anomaly. It took the form of a peculiar colored helix, twirling a meter or so off the ground. As per my instructions, this had to be catalogued, so I timidly approached with my camera, taking snapshots until it was in focus. I didn't want to get any closer than I had to. It turns out the aptly named meat spire is the remnants of Survey Team 6. During the early explorations of Nastondey, they still had no clue as to the dangers and somehow ended up triggering an event. Within the blink of an eye, every member of the team was unraveled and remade into this disturbing landmark, often visited by Pathfinders with tributes such as cigarettes and MREs in memory of Survey Team 6. I couldn't help but pause for a moment and watch the surreal display before continuing my journey. In a few minutes, I'd arrived at the dig site only to find it empty. While this was strange, I wasn't in a rush to question where they were. Already unsettled by the earlier anomaly, I found the fossil and hauled it into my truck. A human-like figure fused into a rock would have usually given me pause for thought, but so far in this journey, it's the least strange thing I've encountered. Once it was secured, I quickly made my way down the path again, watching the meat spire past the window as that little bit of comfort I'd grown accustomed to dissolved. Upon returning to base and the home comforts of that sterile-looking building, I was rewarded with a small promotion and access to some extra bits of equipment. I was also informed the fossil was not human, but instead Homo auroralis. While notably similar to humans, their skull is apparently smaller. They are, however, extinct. Since the day was still early, I decided to head back out, and this time I was sent directly into the storm as I was tasked with fetching a picture of a nearby anomaly. I just wish they told me what it was before I'd arrived. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. It's a little different to some of the stuff I usually do, but I'll talk more on that a little bit later. If you want to see more videos like this or my other content, make sure to like and subscribe to help the channel grow. You can also catch my live playthroughs over on Twitch, links for which are down in the description. Thankfully, my destination was just over a ridge from the route I've already driven a number of times, so the journey was simple, but paranoia mixed with just a little helping of concern kept my attention until I arrived, and in front of me sat a giant undulating sphere. As per instructions, I took a photo from as far a distance as I could while also taking readings on my RF scanner. The CRV-715 is a standard issue and is capable of withstanding low-level God Dream corruption. It detects anomalous radio frequencies linked to both the God Husks and certain auroral artifacts like the Sphere and the Meat Spiral, turning dreams and psychic emissions into audio/visual readout for the user. It's a handy bit of kit, all things considered. Upon returning to base, I found out the Sphere's true nature. The Sphere's chemical analysis indicates that the mass contains every atomic component expected from a transport vehicle and a human adult, meaning the Sphere is likely what became of a previous Pathfinder. While unsettling, I tried not to consider the implications and focus on the job at hand, taking on more work. This job was the furthest I'd traveled, and I'd have no road to assist in navigation, but there was a small silver lining as my route followed the coastline. From the shale beaches, I could see a large tanker ship. I'm not entirely sure of its purpose, either a staging post for Fenrir or another type of husk. Either way, I didn't have long before nightfall, and the idea of traveling after sunset put me on edge, so I didn't try and figure it out in the moment. Navigating the uncertain beaches, sparse forests, and sheer cliffs, I eventually arrived at another kind of ship. This one far older than the one before and scuttled on the beach. It gave off huge amounts of God Dream radiation, so while approaching the ship itself was out of the question, its cargo was free to claim. Even the relatively mundane box I'd been sent to collect turned my stomach. Strange symbols on the side of it made me cautious, but I loaded up anyway and set off only to find myself stuck atop the rocks. Normally, this would be a standard affair for a Pathfinder, but what with the sun about to set and having absolutely no idea what that would mean for me, I started to panic. Thankfully, with some help from my winch and a little fiddling, it wasn't long until I was free, but it did take long enough to see the purple hues of evening as the sun began to set proper. Needless to say, I began to rush. I had no intention of being out here any longer than I had to. Following my earlier path, I cut through the forest and along the beach swiftly. I took no time to take in my surroundings as I only had one goal in mind. With luck and possibly a little bit of skill, I didn't manage to get turned around, and the abrupt white glow of the base's lights was soon visible, and although it was a drab slab of concrete, it felt safe. After unloading the eerie cargo and getting a good night's sleep, it was time to head out again in the safety, or so I thought, of morning. Little did I know this would be my final job. I would be heading high into the nearby mountains to drop off a package. I had no weathered path or coast to follow this time, only a destination and a vague idea of a route. That bizarre crate was once again my cargo, so once it was loaded up and my fuel tank was full, I set out. It didn't take long before I was traveling on uncertain paths, and unfortunately I managed to get myself a little turned around before figuring out a decent course up into the mountains, soon having to traverse snow and sheer cliff edges. Unfortunately, all of this had made me neglect one thing: my fuel. After getting turned around a second time, I realized I wasn't going to make it and finished the trip on foot. But the farther I got from my truck, the more I could feel the thoughts seeping in. Thoughts that weren't my own. I made my delivery and finally got back to the truck, only to see that needle drop to empty. The engine would no longer start, only sputtering some final breaths. I panicked and used a nav dart to confirm my location. I was far from base and no one was coming for me. After all, I was the Pathfinder. Orientating myself in the direction of that concrete slab I called home, I began to walk. Again, that static crept in behind my eyes. Each step away from that bubble of protection I found inside the cabin of my truck let the thoughts in just a little deeper. The dreams of gods. I had so much fun playing Prospice, and it's not even finished yet. On the one hand, I don't like driving games, but on the other, I adore horror games, and Prospice managed to land this unsettling middle ground between the two. The truck acted as this portable little safe space as you explored and learnt more about the hauntingly dead island full of husks and anomalies. It's clear they have a passion for the genre, and I cannot wait to see more. I might even do a full playthrough for the channel in the same style as this video. Speaking of which, you may have noticed that this video was a huge departure from my previous ones, and honestly, I've had so much fun making it. I'm still not entirely sure where I want my YouTube channel to go when it comes to games, but I don't want to do shitty review videos where I have to defend my opinion constantly, and Let's Plays are for Twitch streams. I hope this is a fun middle ground where I can just enjoy the games I enjoy. But hey, what did you think of Prospice? Will you be giving it a go, or am I full of shit? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're there, leave the word truck so I know you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and if I'm lucky, I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ra.